Hey, welcome back to the Fieldcraft Survival channel. Today we're going to talk about some gear I used many years ago that I consider it probably the best pack system I've ever used. And that's saying something since it was in the 80s when I actually used it, but it was ahead of its time. Now, it's important to look at it today in the context of, you know, the mid 80s in the Irish Army when I was serving there. When I went to basic training in 85 and spent 2 years in the infantry, we had web gear that was 1956 pattern. So it was basically the same designs they used in World War II. The big pouches on the front, the canteens, the square backpack on the back, and it was absolute garbage. Now, it wasn't just garbage because the design was old. It was garbage because it was bought by the cheapest bidder, obviously. When we were in basic training, when you put anything in the pouches, the metal clips would just straighten and the gear would fall off. So we had, you know, parachute cord, we called it 550 cord, we had everything rigged up and it was absolute garbage. So then when I went to the Ranger Wing, I was issued with this beast here. This is the Commando pack. It was made by Low Alpine at the time. And it was like, when I got this thing, I was like, wow, it was like something from the future. And it had a bunch of features that I really liked. Obviously, a lot of these things are standard today, but some of them are not. I haven't seen it since. It had the pad in the back that you could move up and down, had all the adjustable straps at perfect height, external pouches that let you access equipment without opening up your rucksack. And in a place like Ireland where it's pouring rain all the time, super important. I remember I used to keep Tupperware boxes in here with all my food so I can get to it quickly. Obviously sleeping compartment on the bottom, very standard today, but back then I was like, wow, that's awesome. The top of the pouch we took off and used as a leg bag for counter-terrorist operations. I'll show you that in a little bit. But one of the really cool features of it was the belt. So the belt system that was on it actually attached through a quick release right here, which I don't have anymore, but it attached to the battle belt. Now, if you look at anybody on the internet today, you're not tacti-cool unless you have a battle belt like this. This one's from Tier, I think. And I don't wear this anymore because I'm not cool enough, but this is kind of the standard now. But that only came about probably mid-2000s, I think. This is what we had in the Ranger Wing in the 80s. And again, it was way ahead of its time. So, like I said, when you're carrying a big-ass heavy rucksack for weeks, it needs to carry a lot of gear. So you absolutely need a belt. The belt takes the weight on your hips, takes the weight off your shoulders. Sometimes when I'm carrying it along, I used to kind of loosen the shoulder straps, let my shoulders breathe a little bit, tighten up the waistband, let my hips take the weight, and then vice versa. I'd loosen up the waistband, let my shoulders take the weight, tighten up the chest strap. I was able to live out of this thing for weeks. But the really cool part is it came like, we used like a 3-part system. So the rucksack was attached to the belt and it just became like any other belt in any other rucksack. But when we get into the patrol base, I was able to hit that quick release and drop my ruck and maintain my battle belt, which kept my sidearm, my radio, and a bunch of very mission essential equipment that we'll talk about in a minute on me at all times. I also wore a chest rack. This is not the one. I used this in Afghanistan. It's a tactical tailor one. It's actually pretty cool because it did take a pistol. It had like a little hidden pouch in here for a map, compass, and I used this while kind of maneuvering across the mountains in Afghanistan with no body armor on and a baseball hat like a jackass. But I just wanted to show you this for the effect of, we had a chest rig. So basically with these 3 components, you're talking about inside the pack, you would have your sleeping bag in the bottom, not that you ever got to it that much, a roll pad to keep you up off the ground, your spare clothing. Now, it was really crucial, again, in a very wet climate up in the mountains of Ireland, that you maintain a dry set of clothes. If you're out there for a very long time, you can't wear your dry clothes except in the sleeping bag at night when you're trying to dry your body out. If you wear them, go moving, within an hour they're soaked, and now you're carrying wet clothes in your pack and you're wearing wet clothes. We never did it, right? Food, there was 4 different types of rations back then, and I can remember some of them, but they were a 24-hour ration pack, and you got them, and we broke them up and we put them inside these Tupperware containers. We used to take the meals, they were almost like little meals you got on an airplane. We crack them out and we drop them in the mess tins, the mess kit, use the little hexi cookers to heat them up, and then we'd pour like bouillon cubes in there, extra water, crackers, and make as much meal out of it as we could. But extra food, wet mess kit, hex cooker, wet weather gear, Gore-Tex socks. I don't hoard stuff, but there's certain things I've had for a very long time, like this pack that I'll never get rid of. These are Gore-Tex socks that I was given in Ireland long time ago. And before that, in the patrol base, we were in trash bags on our feet to try and get our feet to dry out. And you would never move with trash bags on your feet. But once you get in there and you know you're going to be there for a little while, we'd try to dry our feet out. Or you get trench foot, put foot powder on them, put trash bags over them, put your boots back on because you have to be ready at all times. But then when we got these, I was like, oh my God, these are awesome. Wet weather gear. I have still a wet weather jacket here. You'll see a lot of British Army DPM pattern, and it actually wasn't an official pattern, but the Irish Army was just straight up weird, like green or whatever it was. This is, I still think, the coolest pattern of camouflage I've ever worn. I think it's better than multicam. I think it's awesome, and it blended really, really well in Ireland, because Ireland and England, very, very similar terrain. But this is a wet weather jacket. This is a smock designed by the British Army. I love these things. I don't know why the American Army never went to that. Wet weather gear, Gore-Tex socks, foot powder, stuff like that. And then inside the ruck, you would have mission essential equipment, depending on your mission, right? Some guys would be carrying a man-pack radio, bigger radio, reconnaissance equipment, hide site material, poles for building subterranean hides, a basha, which is like a big poncho, but it's like a tarp, but it wraps up really small. I remember it used to go in one of these side pouches perfectly, but it was huge. Bungee cords, parachute cord, all that stuff to construct hides, okay? Depending on what your mission was. All right, so that's the rucksack. And again, you go in the patrol base, you drop your ruck, you maintain your belt. You also, or you could do, if you made contact with the enemy, I'm not gonna fight you with my ruck on. I drop my ruck and I go fight. Now bear in mind, at all times, if I dropped this ruck and lost it, I have enough kit between my chest rig and my belt to go into escape and evasion, or to live off it for at least for a couple of days, right? So in the chest rig, you would have magazines for your rifle, water, map, compass, probably a folding knife, and some guys had, this wasn't standardized, it was kind of up to you, but some guys had their med kit in here, survival kit, some escape and evasion food and stuff like that. But it's kind of fluid. Then on your battle belt, you're talking about a sidearm, a radio, med kit, survival kit, gloves, camo paint, a fixed blade maybe. So you'd have a folding blade in your pack, and then you'd have like a fixed blade. Not as cool as this, but I get these I won this in a sniper competition, and it's such a badass knife. I've never cut anything with it. I can't bring myself to damage the blade. So that's what would be in your battle belt. All right, so the weapons we had back then were, the main weapon people carried was a HK-53, which is a 5.56. It looks like an MP5, but it's 5.56. The thing was badass. It was really cool. I think Garand Thumb did a video on it. The pistol we carried was a SIG P226 or a Browning High Power. They were both there at the time. This is obviously a Glock. HK-53, HK-33, SG-1. Some guys carried suppressed MP5s in case you ran across, you needed to take a suppressed shot in a covert observation position. And then there was a whole host of other kind of packs or weapons. So again, a 3 system: backpack, battle belt, and chest rig, with the ability to do quick release, drop your pack at any time, and you still maintain the ability to fight and go into an escape and evasion scenario, carry out your mission without transferring gear back and forth. And it was always known that this is kind of something that you could ditch. Now, I talked about it earlier on. Actually, let me do this first. This belt also had, it had some loops that were attached later on, so you could wear a harness, because a lot of gear, it does weigh it down. But it has loops here, right? And right here, and then it has a built-in harness here and here. So basically, you just take the belt, you pop the harness out, you wrap it up, you tighten it, and you clip to it so you can rappel. The problem was, we used these for offshore rigs, for training to hit offshore rigs, and when the salt water got in them, it got to the point where people were like, I don't know, because it's so corrosive on material like that. I don't know if I trust this anymore. But again, we're rappelling. Years later, where's my other one? Years later, like 20 years later, when we're operating in Iraq, we're running rapid exfil kits because if you fast rope onto a roof in freaking Baghdad and you try to go through the stairwell downstairs and it's full of bicycles and garbage and you never get on a roof, you can't get off. So years later, we were running rapid exfil kits for rooftops, and we were just clipping into this and rappelling off the roof. Anyway, but this was used for counter-terrorist operations, or even like traversing difficult terrains. You always had a built-in harness. Now, the last thing is the top of this ruck, and it was not designed for this, it's just something we used it for. I'm not going to take it off, but basically if you're doing a counter-terrorist hostage rescue, urban assault, and you're rappelling from a building, after the British used rappelling in 1980 in the Iranian embassy siege, everybody was obsessed with it, right? Never in my life have I actually used it for real. But if you're rappelling down the side of a building, what you don't want is the rope coming off through your harness that's built in here, through your figure of 8, and down, and you don't want it dangling in front of the window if you're coming down from above, right? So what we did was we took this top flap and we hooked it to our battle belt, and the rope came through the figure of 8 and into the rucksack flap, which now we have built-in leg bags for some of those assault kits. So the rope only fed out of that pack as you needed it, so there was never anything dangling down in front of the window to give away your assault. All right, if you look at my Instagram, you'll see a bunch of pictures with me with this belt on throughout the years, and it's really cool. One of the guys in Ireland sent me this because I didn't have it, and he sent me a couple of patches as well. This is the Ranger tab from the Irish Army Ranger Wing, and this is the unit patch. And you know, it looks like an American Ranger tab. That's where it was designed from, but it says Finoglacht, which is a Gaelic word. It's a warrior reference. So I appreciate you guys sending me this. Yeah, hit me up in the comments if you've got questions. And I like old gear like this. I think it gives good perspective. And you know, when you look back, it was I carried this thing hundreds or maybe thousands of miles. I can't remember. Okay, that's it. Hit me up with questions. Thanks for now. Bye.